Every day, we all make the decision of what to wear, depending on where we're going and what we're doing. While most of us usually put little thought into these everyday decisions, although some of us like to go the extra mile, ultimately what we wear expresses our style. However, what we wear can also express in what we believe in. Throughout history, protesters have been using fashion as a way to exhibit their resistance. In the media today, we see protest clothing using colors, design, textures, and symbols, all as a way to cultivate a message. There are many contemporary examples of this, from the NBA's expression of the Black Lives Matter movement through the use of slogan-printed t-shirts, all the way to Lady Gaga's meat dress worn at the 2010 MTV Awards as an opposition against the US military's "don't ask, don't tell" policy. Protest clothing is a visual tactic used to symbolize the rebellion against the standards, traditions, and rules of society, and thus has characterized a legacy of protest fashion throughout 20th century America. Not only is fashion an extension of protest itself, but also a reflection of the political landscape of the time, representing social change exhibited even by regular citizens like us. Protest fashion is a cultural tool of resistance, one that demonstrates the strength of solidarity and unity over a moral or belief that people share. In fact, several significant historical movements have all contributed to this legacy of protest fashion, especially within the last 100 years or so. First is a more traditional example, yet one of the most significant achievements in American history, the women's suffrage movement. Protesters in the women's suffrage movement used specific colors in their fashion, such as white to represent purity, green to represent hope, and purple to represent loyalty. They paired these pastels in their fashion and accessorized with garments such as big hats, flowers, and sashes, often accompanied by slogans. When marching for their voting rights, suffragettes used these colors and symbols as a way to cultivate their message, additionally as a way to represent what they stood for, which was the passing of the 19th Amendment. They got the right to vote with this 19th Amendment in June of 1919 with the aid of protest fashion. Decades later, in the 1960s and beyond, protesters for the revolutionary Black Power movement used fashion in their fight for liberation. One of the most notable Black nationalist groups, the Black Panthers, used a utilitarian style in order to convey their movement. They dressed in all black leather, black sunglasses, black berets, and their natural Afrocentric hair. These styles were meant as both a representation of the rejection of Western beauty standards, as well as a way to conceal members' identities. Founders Huey Newton, who's seen on this slide, and Bobby Seale formed the Black Panther Party in the late 1960s in Oakland, California. And famous activists such as Angela Davis and Fred Hampton also even wore the black berets at one point. Ideology adopted from socialist revolutionaries such as Che Guevara heavily influenced the symbols of the Panthers. Their attire meant to defy military force by utilizing the idea of a uniform in order to appear combative. Another additional symbol of the Panthers was the gun, often slung over their shoulder as a way to represent one of their ideals, armed self-defense. Beyoncé and her singers appeared at the 2016 Super Bowl halftime show as a way to represent their visuals. They dressed in the black leather and black berets as a nod to the intellectual roots of the movement. The Black Panthers were not the only example of utilizing fashion throughout the 60s as a radical symbol. Another notable example is the anti-Vietnam War movement, where protesters dressed in colorful fabrics such as florals and funky patterns, which many of us associate with the decades of the 60s and 70s. However, these fashions were more than just a psychedelic or hippie way of dress. They symbolized the rejection of the military and the defiance of counterculture movement today. For example, long, unkept hair on men specifically and directly contrasted with gender expectations, as well as the structured discipline of the military. Additionally, it rejected the draft, which many protesters considered a part of the immoral war. Bell-bottoms also defined counterculture fashions, with both men and women wearing the style, making it part of mainstream fashions during the 60s and 70s. However, the pant also repurposed the style originally used in the uniforms of military soldiers, further cementing the idea of defiance of the military during the anti-Vietnam War protests. In all three movements, protest fashion serves like armor, protecting against policing and arrest. We see this especially today, where Black Lives Matter activists wear dark hoodies, dark colors, and masks as a way to protect their identities as well as from tear gas. So, the next time you wear your favorite vintage leather jacket or bell bottoms, remember that these styles originally had deep political meaning and were a radical form of protest for the brave people who wore them. Clothing often regards to express one's individuality. However, throughout history, clothing has also been a way to define solidarity of a movement. Sometimes even a scarf holds its own protest. Thank you.